You've been very patient in this day-long seminar. Sometimes I see more cell phones. It's a very nice crew. There's not a lot of this or worse. Lap cell phone use, which is great. We're almost through, right? We've gone through assessment, treatment, and prevention of severe problem behavior, but now we're going to end on, it is actually a lighter note, sleep problems. So we'll have a little fun, I hope, talking about sleep problems. I got into this because I was fortunate to work with Kathleen Piazza at the Kennedy Krieger Institute years back. And she was so generous with her time and opportunities, she let me work with her in a sleep clinic that she had, and we got to write a chapter together way back when. And then when I left there, I always looked for opportunities to help parents with sleep problems. I always found it to be the most fun thing to help parents with. But I never did any research on it, so my colleagues always think it's strange when I do sleep talks. But now we finally have research on it, because I met one of the most wonderful graduate students named Sandy Jin, and she came over to the Western New England from California, and I said, might you be interested in making sleep part of your dissertation and scholarship? And she said, I'd love it. And she did love it, and she spent a good solid 4 years developing a clinic with me and developing some research. And so everything I'm going to share with you today is based on what I learned with Kathleen many years ago, 16, 17 years ago, and then what Sandy and I discovered together in our clinic at Western New England University. First, let's start out with the working assumption. The main working assumption for us is that sleep problems, even though there's some really interesting biology associated with sleep, for us, sleep problems are merely viewed as skill deficits. And I know many people don't think of a sleep problem like that. It's merely a skill deficit. But folks, the ability to fall asleep quickly is a skill. Unfortunately, some of you are going to engage in that skill in about 10 minutes. Okay? It's like yawning. You can't talk about yawning without people yawning. You can't talk about sleep without people sleeping. It'll happen. But nevertheless, falling asleep quickly is a skill. Waking up in the middle of the night and falling asleep back to sleep quickly is a skill. Staying asleep throughout the night and not remembering that you even woke up, that's a skill set. It's a skill set that can come under the control of environmental conditions, and we are the people that know how to design environmental conditions conducive to skill development. And so BCBAs have a place at the table in helping people resolve sleep problems. Now, many families we meet that have children with autism don't even complain about the sleep problem because they just think that's autism. That's just my son. He's always only slept 4, 5, 6 hours a night. Therefore, I only sleep 4, 5, 6 hours a night, and that's just our life, and that's autism. In fact, you see YouTube videos, parents describing what it's like to live with a child with autism, and they describe it. Severe problem behavior just happens. That's autism. Not sleeping through the night, that's just autism. It's not autism. That's a myth. All kids with autism can learn to sleep through the night. All kids with autism can learn to fall asleep quickly. It's just a skill. And just like a lot of skills that kids with autism don't learn by accident, we have to teach it. So what we're going to focus on today is how to teach that skill of falling asleep quickly, staying asleep through the night. Okay. What's good sleep? Some people run away from this topic, I think, because it's hard to define. Good sleep's like happiness. Hard to define, but we know it when we experience it, right? Some people say it's like pornography, too. We know when we experience it, hard to define. Okay. Let's talk about sleep instead of pornography so I keep my job. Good sleep. What is it? You tell me. We're going to be interactive today. What's good sleep? What's a characteristic of good sleep?
I like waking up in the middle of the night and knowing I have like 3 or 4 hours left.
Oh, you like the promise of more sleep, huh? Wow, I haven't heard that one before. I mean, as long as you fall back asleep quickly, I think that is a characteristic of good sleep, to wake up and fall asleep quickly. Fall back asleep quickly.
I like not waking up at all.
Yeah. What's interesting is biologically, we all wake up about 8 times a night. But the trick is not remembering that you woke up those 8 times a night. We want them to be micro awakenings that we don't remember, that don't enter into our consciousness, if you will. So yes, staying asleep through the night is a characteristic of good sleep. What's another characteristic of good sleep?
Waking up not feeling tired.
That's right. Waking up feeling refreshed, not feeling compelled to take a nap 7 times a day. Okay? Waking up feeling pretty refreshed. What's another characteristic of good sleep?
8 hours.
Okay, a particular length. And we'll talk about how many hours. That's an interesting one. How many hours should our kids get? How many hours should you and I get? And by the way, I'm going to end the sleep stuff on you and I, because this isn't just relevant to the kids we serve, this is relevant to us. Half the people in this room do not have good sleep. I don't need to interview you, we just know that from statistics, okay? Half the people in this room are not happy with the amount of sleep they're getting, or how they sleep, or whether they can wake up, or feel refreshed when they wake up, or stay asleep through the night. Here are the characteristics we usually write down. Fall asleep quickly. Healthy sleepers, how long do you think it takes for them to fall asleep from when their head hits the pillow to when they're out? How long? 30 minutes? 10 minutes? 7 minutes? 5 minutes? The answer is 2 to 3 minutes.
No way.
True. Healthy sleepers only take about 2 to 3 minutes to fall asleep from when their head hits the pillow. Yeah, that's what we're going to shoot for today. Now, in our world, our goal is 15 minutes or less. The reason why we really focus on falling asleep quickly is when kids don't fall asleep quickly, when you don't fall asleep quickly, you're doing something else. Whereas humans, we behave. We never not behave. We're always behaving, okay, when we're awake. And if you're not sleeping in bed, you're behaving. So sometimes kids are crying, calling out. Sometimes they're engaging in stereotypy. Sometimes they're checking their cell phone to see what Ashton Kutcher just tweeted, right? Maybe you're doing that. If you are, get a life, okay? Some of you are doing what I do, and you're just ruminating. You're just talking to yourself. You're just spinning your mental tires. Zzz. You haven't solved any world problems, right? You're just spinning the tires, reflecting on your day, thinking about your day tomorrow, maybe talking yourself into a generalized anxiety disorder, okay? So if you don't fall asleep quickly, I'm going to just throw weird stuff in there because I know you're going to fall asleep on me, so I'm going to keep jabbing at you. I'm going to lie to you every now and then, too. Be careful. I'm going to lie to you. I hope you catch it. Okay, I'll probably tell you when I lie. Okay. We want kids to fall asleep within 15 minutes. We want them to stay asleep through the night. We want them to wake up feeling pretty refreshed during the day. Okay. Let's talk about some correlational research. This is not my research, but I respect this research because it gives me the impetus, the reason to talk about this. It seems a little silly maybe spending 2 hours talking about sleep, but I think it's time well spent. And the reason being is because when kids don't sleep, they're more irritable, they're more tired. No kidding. We have studies showing this, but we know this. This is a neat study. When kids don't sleep, they're more likely to suffer from unintentional injury. So when people study this, there's an inverse correlation. The less sleep, the more likely there's going to be an injury. When kids don't sleep, they're less likely to follow instructions, they're less likely to learn, and they're more likely to engage in problem behavior. This is the stuff of applied behavior analysis, right? We're constantly being called in to work with noncompliance, to build the perfect teaching program, and to address severe problem behavior. And if folks in your care are not sleeping, this job is very hard. I often think when kids aren't sleeping, when they're routinely getting 4 or 5 hours a night, and you're trying to manage behavior with tokens and DROs, even with a function-based treatment, it's like trying to stop a runaway bus by throwing tennis balls at it. It's just not going to work, folks. We got to get that sleep under control. Once we see that sleep resolve often, our tennis ball-based treatments can really change the course of those behaviors. Here's an example from a young man we work with at New England Center for Children. We're helping him with his motor stereotypy. He was 17 years old. All he did all day was engage in motor stereotypy, twisting his fingers in his clothes, flicking lint, body rocking, hand flapping in light. While we're measuring his stereotypy in red, we notice that there's a lot of peaks and valleys. The reds are direct observation data aggregated across the day, multiple sessions aggregated. We also had reliable data, because NEC has a lot of staff, on his sleep. And what we noticed was an inverse correlation. And this is a pretty powerful negative correlation, that as the sleep decreased, the probability of stereotypy increased. And as the sleep normalized to about 8 hours a night, we saw a decrease in stereotypy. This is just one of many examples of the correlation between the kind of behaviors we're called upon to treat and their relationship to number of hours slept. Good sleep's also important in the long term for children. This has nothing to do with autism. This is just kids. When kids don't sleep, they're more likely to be obese. They're more likely to be obese in adulthood. When kids don't sleep, they're more likely to have that educational classification of emotional behavior disorder. They're more likely to have emotional disturbances. When kids don't sleep, they're more likely to have clinical levels of anxiety in adulthood, and they're more likely to have sleep problems through adulthood. Let me make something very clear. I'm going to cut upon pediatricians a little bit. I work with some amazing pediatricians out in Western Mass. I think pediatrics is the most noble of medical professions. But unfortunately, pediatrics have to do everything, and sometimes they misstep. One big misstep that's common among pediatricians is telling parents of young children that they'll grow out of the sleep problem. That is not true. Any study that's looked at that shows when kids have a sleep problem in their youth, it persists unabated unless there's intervention. When you practice not sleeping in bed, you get good at it. Okay? So when a child doesn't sleep well, they become adults who don't sleep well. Sleep also affects the family dynamic. It mainly affects moms. No offense, dads, but moms usually bear the brunt of the burden when it comes to sleep problems. Moms are the one getting out of bed and managing those call-outs at night. So it's no surprise we see a higher correlation of maternal malaise and depression in families that have kids that don't sleep. It's no surprise that you have parental sleep problems. When we do research in the sleep area, we have infrared video recorders that we put in parents' or children's bedrooms. It records cool things like ambient light, temperature, but it also has a video camera right on the sleeper. And we see a lot of family bed. That means parents are co-sleeping with their children. And I'll talk about family bed in a minute. But basically, we see a lot of this: mom, dad, child. Parents and kids never sleep like a pack of cigarettes. They always sleep like the letter H, right? The head on the torso, the feet on the other parent's abdomen, okay? So when kids don't sleep, parents usually go to some heroic means to help with that. They create the family bed, they create the family H, and then the parents aren't sleeping as well as they could be. And then there's this very sad correlation in the developmental disabilities literature. This correlation is even more pronounced in the autism literature, and that is that there's a higher divorce rate among parents of children with disabilities, and even higher among families that have children with autism in them. And I'm a little simple-minded, but I can't help but think that what might be driving the marital discord is the lack of sleep. It could be as simple as that. When we don't sleep well, we don't treat each other well. And the people we treat the worst are those who are the closest to us. So this is one of the reasons why I'm very motivated to affect the sleep issues in the home, because I think it can have major effects outside of the bedroom, if you will. Okay. If you're a behavior analyst, if you're a helping professional in general, you're going to have the opportunity to help a family with a sleep problem because they're very prevalent. 35 to 50% of kids have a sleep problem between the ages of 2 and 7. You throw autism into the mix, it goes higher. 63 to 73%. A new study came out where they asked better ways of asking the questions, not allowing parents to say, no, it's just Billy, that's just his autism. They got through that stuff, and it's actually upwards of 80%. You might say, well, what is that some diagnostic expansion? Is there some malarkey going on there? I don't believe it is. It's just that falling asleep, staying asleep is a skill, and like other skills, it needs to be explicitly taught sometimes, especially to kids with autism. I want to mention one other thing conceptually, because you might say, this is still a bunch of malarkey. How can 50% of kids have a diagnosable sleep problem? What's going on here? I just want to talk about how we're built to sleep, our ancestral history that's encoded in our genes, how we learn to sleep, how our ancestors learned to sleep, and how that's built us for sleeping, and then talk about cultural pressures and talk about the lack of marriage between those two. Okay. We were built to sleep together. Historically, humans slept together. There's a lot of evidence of this. One of my favorite forms of evidence is they found the oldest bed in a cave in Africa. It was 50,000 years old, and it was 22 feet by 22 feet. Okay? It showed that there was this group living phenomena going on. It had a 2-inch pillow top. They were very surprised by that. That's a lie. Wake up, people. Pillow tops are foam. They were invented about 50 years ago. Okay? 50,000 years old. This thing was made of twigs and leaves and spit. Okay? We were built to sleep together. Okay? We were built to sleep when it was dark, when it was cool, right? And so our biological rhythms are in accordance with light-dark cycles. Okay? We were built to sleep under conditions where when it was dark and cool, there were no other reinforcers other than the reinforcer of sleep. 50,000 years ago, if you decided to leave your 22-foot by 22-foot bed, tried to mosey out to get some reinforcers, what are you going to get? Eaten, cold, Maybe you'll stub your toe, right? But not a lot of good things. Okay, let's talk about where we are now. What do we do with kids? We invite them into our 22-foot by 22-foot bed? Not normally unless there's a problem. We sequester them to their own spaces. You go down there, 4 doors down, take a right. That's where you sleep, right? You go way over there. That's in my house. I live in a little house, but it's still like, you sleep over there. My daughter, you sleep over there. And this is where my wife and I sleep. You go ancestrally, 22-foot bed altogether. Now, go to your own spaces. Ancestrally, we slept when it was dark and cold. Daylight savings time, I got my kids going to bed. It's light out. I got them waking up. It's dark out. I got artificial light. There's lights on all over the place when they're supposed to be going to sleep. Their melatonin can't drop like it used to because it's not dark. TV's on, lights are up. Okay. What can they get in the middle of the night? Well, they can get movies on demand, milkshakes, whatever the hell they want. How's that? Let's just get to it. They can get whatever reinforcer they want in our 24/7 on culture. Okay. We were built to sleep a particular way under a particular set of conditions. Our culture is very different now. Okay? And I think it's the clash between our ancestral history and our current cultural situation that gives rise to all these sleep problems. But what's cool is we're environmentalists. So we know we can work in the middle. We can't change the genes. We can't change the ancestral history. I'm not about to try to change a culture, but I can change that sleep environment. I can change that sleep routine. And so that's what we're going to focus on. It doesn't mean I ignore the biology or the culture. It means I'm going to work within what I can work within, and that is the sleep environment. Okay. Pediatricians. That's where parents go when they have a sleep problem, right? That's where you go. You don't find a BCBA when you have a sleep problem as a parent of a young child. You go to your pediatrician. A neat study was done a few years back looking at the training pediatricians get and family health providers get with sleep. They get 5 hours of training, 4 hours of which is usually anatomy and physiology, which leaves 1 hour for assessment and treatment. So it's no surprise then. There was a study done where it looked at visitation records from 10 of the biggest hospitals in America. And a visitation record is every time you go to a doctor, someone in the front office clicks off the complaints, the reason why you're there. Was it a wellness visit, report of a cold, sleep problem, complaints about sleeping? They looked at all the records where they said there was a complaint about sleeping, then looked at what was the treatment, what was prescribed. And what they found was 81% of the time, parents left the doctor's office, family medicine, pediatrics, psychiatrists, neurologists with a prescription for a sleep aid. We're talking children. Now, I'm not against drugs. I'm not. I like to get high all the time. I'm just kidding. Another lie. Just want to make sure you're awake. But I take Advil. I take Tums. Okay? I'm really glad for those companies that develop those things. I rely on those things. I take allergy pills. Okay? But I do have a problem with sleep meds for kids. Number one, there's not a single drug approved in America for that problem. It's all off-label prescriptions. 81% of people that go into doctor's office in America get a prescription. It's all off-label. We bothered to look at the literature. There is not a single an efficacy signal in the literature. The meds don't work. Now, some of you are sitting there and you have kids and you're like, listen, I gave my boy Benadryl last night and he slept like a baby, right? I'm trying to imitate you in a bad sort of way. So we get an adversarial relationship going right now, because we've had a better relationship as time goes on. Let me tell you what I mean by they don't work, because they do not work, people. Let me show you the story in single subject data about what I mean by they don't work. We don't publish these sort of graphs. This is called a working graph. This is the kind of graph we used in our sleep clinic. Basically, we have time along this axis. 9 p.m., that's nighttime when someone goes to bed. This is the night hours, and then this is the morning hours. Each line represents a day, a nighttime cycle, that is. The gray means the child's in bed. The black means they're sleeping. This little girl's 3 years old. She comes in on melatonin. Melatonin, by the way, is not a drug in America. It's a food. But she's also on drugs like clonidine and hydroxyzine. She's 3 years old. Now you might say, oh, wow, I can't believe a 3-year-old. I rarely meet a child in our sleep clinic that is not on clonidine. Almost every child with autism that does not sleep and the parents find their way to us come in on clonidine. This is not a rare event, folks. We're using antipsychotics and other sort of medications to help kids fall asleep. So this little lady's on these meds. You can see She's falling asleep quickly. The difference between the black and gray bar is very small. She's falling asleep quickly. That's what medication does. We have the technology to knock kids out, don't we? Yeah. You can give them a whole range of pills, over-the-counter, prescribed. You can knock kids out. We can do that. We have that technology. That's not what I mean by they don't work. They do work at decreasing onset to sleep delay. Okay? So that's what's happening. But I want you to look at this, and this, and this, and this. She's waking up a lot during the night. Because here's what happens. If you medicate a child to sleep, they lose the opportunity to learn the skill about how to settle themselves to sleep. And when the meds wear off a little bit and they wake up, and they will wake up because biologically kids wake up about 10 times a night, and when they wake up and they do not have that skill, what do they need to do? Yell out, call out to mommy, create that family bed, that reluctant family bed perhaps, okay? So with this little lady, she was in a comparative analysis, so the behavioral intervention took some time. I'll explain what that analysis was later. We work with behavioral developmental pediatricians. I have a very draconian policy, I readily admit it. I will not work with the child and a family if the child's going to continue on sleep medicine. Don't come to the clinic. Sorry. Here's why. I need to teach the kid the skill to fall asleep, and if they're drugged, I can't teach the skill. I'm not just being mean, I'm not just being biased against medication. I need the kid lucid. I need them going to bed smart. I can't have them going to bed like this. You see what I'm saying? So we work with behavioral developmental pediatricians. They get them off the medications. This child now is on no medication. Look at the sleep onset now. What is it? Is it better or worse? Worse. There's a bigger gap between the gray and the black. This is why parents disagree with me time and time again. No, the meds work. When she was on it, it didn't take her a long time to fall asleep, but when she came off it, it took her so long to fall asleep. What do I got to do? Put her back on that medication, right? That's a natural reversal, if you will. Time and time again, parents tell us this story. Here we put behavioral intervention in place. I want you to look at the data here. She's not falling asleep immediately because we're not drugging her to sleep. It's taken her on average about 12 minutes to fall asleep. But you can see there's no breaks in the lines because she's learned the skills to fall asleep and she's been able to apply those skills during the night. That's what we're looking for. So when I say meds don't work, I don't mean we can't knock kids out. What I mean is they don't result in good sleep. Good sleep being defined by falling asleep quickly, staying asleep through the night, feeling refreshed during the day. There's not a single study that shows a medication can do that. But we do have behavioral studies to show we can do that. And that's why I'm saying you, BCBAs, you are the people that should be at the table when it comes to resolving the sleep problem. Okay. Just quick, the same study said, oh no, 22% of the time MDs recommend behavioral solutions. So I was like, oh, that's cool. How do they know to do that? But in this study, a behavioral solution was anything you didn't put in your mouth. Seriously, it's a default category. Candles and lotion are a behavioral treatment. I did not know that. Now, lotion's great, but you can lube up your kid in Vaseline or whatever you want all night. That's not going to help him fall asleep. You can put as many scented candles as you want. It's not going to help him fall asleep. Okay, it's nice, pleasant, perhaps, doesn't burn the house down. Okay. I'm going to talk about what's a real behavioral intervention, a behavior analytic intervention. Behavior analytic intervention means we first are humble enough to ask questions to understand what the controlling variables are for the sleep problem, and then we weave those into a function-based solution. We're going to talk about these problems. Let me just operation define them real quick. Nighttime routine noncompliance. So we give child instruction to go to bed or do something bed relevant, like brush your teeth, put on your PJs, head upstairs. We either get non-cooperative behavior or outward oppositional problem behavior. Sleep interfering behavior, by contrast, this is after we bid the child good night. So we say, good night, buddy, I'll see you in the morning, and then we see the problem behavior. Those problem behaviors look like calling out for mommy and daddy, crying in bed. Sometimes we have what we call curtain calls. My kids sleep great, but every kid goes through those little phases where they're testing the contingencies. My kids did two very different curtain calls. My daughter's was the spooky curtain call. We have a little sunken TV room. She comes and swings in from the kitchen very quietly. She just stand there listening to our conversation. She's beautiful. She's very fair-skinned, got straight hair. She looks like Carrie from that horror movie. It's like you just, oh! You just turn around, she'd scare the heck out of you. My son, by contrast, was more of a Hollywood curtain call. He would be like, you thought I was asleep, but I've been up for 2 hours. Ah! So they take different forms. Sleep interfering behavior. I'm going to keep you awake, folks. That's my mission. Sleep interfering behavior takes many forms. Call-outs, curtain calls, crying. Sometimes it's playing in bed. Kids wait till the doors close and they go get their toys. They get their electronics. Sometimes kids will engage in stereotypy really intensely because they weren't allowed to do it all day. And the only time they can do it is when that door's closed. That might be an interfering behavior. Again, for you and I, we might be talking to ourselves too much. Then we have delayed sleep onset. That's just how long it takes to fall asleep. We're looking for under 15 minutes. When it's longer than that, we say it's a problem. Night awakenings means you fell asleep, you woke up for an extended amount of time where people are aware of it, but you fell back asleep. Early awakenings, they're worse. That means you woke up and you never went back to sleep. It doesn't mean when it was. Could be at midnight. Okay? These are the 5 problems I'm mainly going to address today. I don't have time to talk about nightmares and confusional arousals and all those parasomnias. We're mainly dealing with insomnia. These are the elements of insomnia usually.
Can you deal with those?
Just quickly on the parasomnias like sleepwalking and sleep talking and all that, the best treatment, really quickly, is the 5-step treatment we're going to talk about for these behaviors. The best way to get rid of parasomnia is to get healthy sleep. That's really the best. Now, there's stuff around the edges, maybe deal with some anxiety and all that stuff. And if we have time, I'm happy to talk about them. But I normally don't try to deal with them. We want to deal with these are the behaviors we advertise we really deal with. But the kids come in with those things sometimes, and we do our best to deal with them. And our best is usually the same thing we do for these. Okay? We have a target behavior, folks. Just like behavior else, we have to have a target behavior. Our target behavior is what we call behavioral quietude. Laying down, not doing much, not saying much, okay? And that leads to falling asleep. That's our target behavior. I want to make it very clear. This target behavior can be motivated and demotivated. This is where the behavioral stuff's going to come in line. Why is it that Johnny at 3 in the morning is always up? He's not motivated to just lay still. But at 3 in the afternoon, you can't move this kid. He's sleeping. It can become motivated and demotivated. It can become reliant on environmental cues. Now, when I go up north, this is an easy one, but I don't know if it'll work down here. Let me just ask. Now, I need you to be honest. I'm going to share some stories about myself, okay? So I'm going to share with you, and I'm do that so you will share with me, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but please share. How many of you, and just put your finger on your nose if you don't want anyone to see. Just do this. How many of you cannot sleep unless you have socks on? Come on, give me your fingers. Not many. And they're raising. Look at that. She's a proud sock wearer. Yeah?
I'm South Floridian. I wore them too.
Even a Floridian. Now, if I'm up in Canada, I get at least 20%. They're always in the minority. Come on, raise your hands now. Sock sleepers. If it depends, it's not it. Just one's, just be proud. She's a sock sleeper. Now, how many people could not fall asleep were they to have socks on tonight? We are non-sock sleepers, okay? You're a sock sleeper? 2. Okay. There you go. Now, my wife, I call her a Flintstone sleeper. She can't sleep unless her foot's outside the covers. That's her little temperature control foot, okay? We all have our little picadillos. We can't sleep unless we're in this position, have this thing. Maybe it's the TV on, maybe it's the fan, a particular comforter, a pillow. Our kids are the same way. So as behavior analysts, how we interpret this is our sleep is reliant on cues in the environment. They're SDs. Without those SDs, the target behavior does not occur very readily. And then finally, sleep can be affected by other reinforcers during the night. Let's do a quick contingency analysis. I do not do a functional analysis when trying to resolve sleep problems, but I do a functional assessment. I interview to try to understand why the problem behavior is occurring. So let's do this little thought-based functional assessment. We know the reinforcer for behavioral quietude is sleep. That's kind of cool. We have that. We have that figured out already. But we have to figure out this. What's the EO? What is making sleep valuable or invaluable during the times we want or don't want sleep? What are the EOs for sleep? Not having slept in a while is a clear EO. That's an obvious EO. Wine. Too much wine is an EO. Yes? Particular company in my house. I call them in-laws. That's an establishing operation. Is this being taped? That's an establishing operation for sleep. Okay, we need to figure out what are the establishing operations for sleep for the kids we're serving. We also need to figure out what are their dependencies. Are they dependent on a bottle, a TV, an electronic, parental presence? Are they dependent on the back rub to fall asleep? Then we have to do a separate contingency analysis for the interfering behaviors. What are they? Are they crying? Are they calling out? Are they playing with electronics? What's the reinforcer for those behaviors? Are they trying to get mommy's attention? Are they trying to get out of the bedroom? Is it a negative reinforcer? Is it both? What makes those reinforcers so valuable? Why do you need mommy's attention at 3 in the morning? You ignored her all day. Why now? Okay? What signals to you that mommy's even available? She's like 4 doors down the hall. How do you know that's available right now? So we do a contingency analysis. We look at the reinforcers, the EOs, and the SDs. Do we ask questions like this? No. I'm only doing this for the behavior analyst in the room to know we're doing behavior analysis here. But we leave this stuff behind, just talk like normal people to the families we're trying to serve. We talk like normal people in the context of the SAT. That's called the Sleep Assessment and Treatment Tool. That should also be in your workbook. Is it in your workbook? Or it's embedded within the workbook. Okay? It's just a series of questions asking parents about the factors influencing sleep. Okay? If it's not, I believe I provided it, but if I didn't, I'm happy to re-provide it. You have it. Wonderful. It's called the Sleep Assessment and Treatment Tool. Let me explain what we do with this. When we meet a family with a sleep problem, the first thing we do is we sit down with the SAT and we ask them questions. Questions start out with, what are the problems? What are your goals for your child? What are your sleep goals for your child? Then we ask them questions about schedule, bedtime routine, bedroom conditions, sleep dependencies, reinforcers available during the night, so on and so forth. It's all in there. So one function of the SAT is to figure out factors influencing the problem. The other function of this time is to educate parents about the biology and the environmental determinants of sleep. I'm going to try to do that in the next hour. Okay? And that's what we try to transmit to parents. And then the third feature of this interview is we build the treatment with the parents. I want to make it something very clear. I do not identify what I think are the controlling variables, leave the room, design a treatment, and then go back and say, here, try this. Because parents are not effective contingency managers at 3 in the morning or 10 at night. They have to have buy-in to the treatment. They have to develop it with me. Even if I know that I want them to do something, I will simply lay back and say, and then I teach them about the biology, environmental determinants of sleep, hoping that they come up with a solution on their own. If they don't, I offer a couple ideas. I see which one seems to fit better with them, and we move forward. When we're doing an interview for severe problem behavior, it takes me on average 30 minutes. When I do a SAT, it takes me on average 90 minutes. I want to make that very clear. It takes me time. Why? Because it has 3 functions. Get information, teach, design a treatment with buy-in. Sometimes we split up these interviews into 2 parts. Okay. I'm going to give you a quick example of the treatment effects. Ready? We have a 4-year-old boy with Ray. Ray is one of those 4-year-old boys that is also exceptionally hyperactive. Ray is cut. He doesn't have a 6-pack. He's got like a 9, 10-pack. He's got little muscles. He's a little muscle man because he's just bouncing off the walls all day. Are you with me? Okay. Ray's parents learned mighty quick that if they did not lay with Ray and basically restrain him to sleep, he was not going to sleep. Okay? And what they described is if they let Ray go, he would get up out of the bedroom and just bounce around the house creating havoc. So we give them a video camera. We're like, just show us if you would. So sometimes we ask them to show us. So this is one of the funniest videos, and I should get consent to show it, but I don't like to have those relationships with parents. They think I'm using them for their videos. But anyways, this video is hilarious, and it goes something like this. Ray leaves the bedroom. We have the video. We have a video camera in the bedroom and a video camera outside the bedroom. Ray leaves the bedroom, goes to the fridge, takes the eggs, starts hauling them all over the house, takes the milk, go, 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 and he's laughing, and he's kicking the milk. I'm like, where the hell are his parents, right? All of a sudden, Dad comes out of the bedroom. He's a big guy, lumbering guy. He's like, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to see it on film. I'm going to have to report this guy. He is going to kill Ray. And he goes like this. Oh, Ray. I'm like, oh, so the mother must be a disciplinarian. So I hear footsteps from the other direction. The mother comes down. I'm like, oh man, she's going to beat his little behind. This is going to be terrible. I'm going to have to report her to the police. And she looks at her husband, and she looks, oh, Ray, softer. I could not believe it. And I thought to myself at that moment, Ray could not have been born into a better family. This was incredible because most people would have killed Ray at this point, okay? I know if he was born into my parents' house, it wouldn't have been good for Ray. Now, marijuana is legal in Massachusetts. I have a feeling... Anyways, just thought. So I'm going to go through this quick. This is on sleep onset delay. We get parent diary as well as videotape data. And we have people sample the videotapes. That's how we get our direct observation. We've done empirical studies looking at what window size we need. Where you look at the data 10 minutes, every 10 minutes, and record awake or sleep till they fall asleep. Then we look every 30 minutes to detect night awakenings. That's the black data. The open triangle is a parent report. This is interfering behavior, Ray getting out of bed, creating havoc. This is night and early awakenings. You can see sometimes he's up for an hour and a half. Sometimes he's up a lot longer than that, 4 hours at night. We want him to sleep within this range. This is his total sleep. He's generally getting less than age-appropriate amount of sleep. He was on clonidine at the time. When we take him off, the doctors take him off clonidine, you can see sleep onset delay gets slightly worse. We see that all the time, so we prepare parents for that. We see persistence of interfering behavior, a lot of nighttime awakenings, still not getting age-appropriate amount of sleep. Here's what happens after the behavioral intervention. I want to make something clear about the behavioral intervention. I'm going to go through 5 parts. I'm going to go through them in sequence, but we implement them all at once. They work synergistically. We need them all in place at the same time. When we put them in place at the same time, we get big effects. Here's an example of a big effect. Sleep onset delay is 0. He falls asleep when his head hits the pillow. His interfering behavior is 0, despite him being sick and his father is not in the bedroom with him. We're still struggling a little bit with night and early awakenings, but we've gotten rid of the high points, the variability. He still wakes up a little bit and gets out of bed in the night. And we're tending towards an age-appropriate amount of sleep right now. If you want to see, I'm going through this quick, so if you want to see this whole 5-point treatment process in one place, I strongly encourage you to look at the article by Sandy Jin published in JAVA last year. It takes families from the time we meet them till the time they say problem solved throughout the whole process. 3 families with results not dissimilar from Ray's. Here's the data I'm most proud of. I was helping families with sleep for a long time, but I knew a lot of things I was recommending parents were not too psyched about. A lot of ways to change behavior, only a few ways to change it so people like it. These are Sandy's results. When we ask parents what they thought about the assessment, the treatment, the amount of improvement in sleep, and the consultation, we get good grades. Why do we get good grades? Because we help the parents build the treatment. Because we're very sensitive to things parents aren't likely to do in the middle of the night. There are a lot of ways to help sleep. I'm only going to share the ones that result in these kind of these bits of feedback, the kinds we commit to. Here are the 5 steps in the treatment. Okay. First, we're going to talk about how to develop an ideal sleep schedule. There's some factoids we want to consider, and there's some counterintuitive things we must acknowledge. Second, we're going to talk about how to routinize the nighttime routine, optimize the bedroom conditions. We're going to talk about dealing with sleep dependencies, making sure we have healthy ones. And then we're going to talk about how to manage those contingencies for the interfering behavior. That's last because it's the hardest. Okay, let's get to it. First, age matters when it comes to how long a child should be in bed. Second, we need to understand a notion called a forbidden zone. I'm going to operation define that. And then third, we need to recognize our universal tendency to stay up later and wake up later each night. Okay, let's get to each one of these in turn. This is a typical chart you'll find in any pediatrics book about sleep. Given a child's age, this is approximately how long they should sleep. What I mean by approximately is it's about 30 minutes of give on each side. So a 9-year-old needs 9.5 to 10.5 hours of sleep. By contrast, a 4-year-old usually requires 10.5 to 11.5 hours of sleep. When kids have autism, they fall on the lighter end of the range, generally. How are these data derived? They're done from interviews, descriptive studies, and laboratory experiments. These data are pretty good. Sometimes we empirically derive how long a child needs to sleep. That's complicated. I'm not going to go over that now. We normally use the chart. Let's remember those again. The anchors for me are 4-year-old, 11 hours. 9-year-old, 10 hours. You and me, there's a little debate here, 7.5 to 9. So let's split the difference and say a little bit more than 8. Most of us are not getting a little bit more than 8 with any consistency. I know I'm not. But man, when I do, I'm a nice guy. And when I don't, well, I'm who I am right now. Okay. This is a chart that's broken out. This is a chart in any sleep book. Richard Ferber's book is where I pulled this from. He's a very famous sleep doctor. But anyways, this is nice for young parents because it has the breakdown from 1 week old to months old to years. Kind of tells you how many naps you might want to program for your child and all sorts of things like that. It's very helpful to young parents. We used it as young parents. Okay. Sometimes kids have a difficult time falling asleep. Sometimes they engage in pretty horrific behavior while you're expecting them to fall asleep. Sometimes they wake up a lot during the night. And sometimes it's merely a matter of they're being expected to be in bed too long. Now, I doubt you're doing this with your own kids, but I want to talk about residential care for a minute. My neighborhood, when kids go to residential care, they usually go between the ages of 7 and 10. That's when they start getting a little meaty. Parents can't manage the situation anymore, so they enter residential care. Let's say the kid enters at 9 years old. They set up the routine for him, the staffing. So he's going to go to bed at, let's say, 9 o'clock. They're 9 years old. How much sleep do they need? 10 hours. So let's do a little clock math. They go to bed at 9. They're going to wake up at 7. You staff accordingly. As time goes on, that boy's 17 years old. What time do you think they go to bed? 9 o'clock. What time do they get up? 7 o'clock, because that's what the staffing patterns allow. You have a boy that perhaps only needs 8 hours of sleep, expected to sleep for 10 hours. Is it any surprise they're fighting you to go to bed? Is it any surprise that we have to put in a cookie-cutter BMOD program? If you're good on the nighttime, you get a donut in the morning, right? You know what I'm talking about? When I talk behavior modification, I like to be a robot. Let's all do that. Then we're going to learn to hate that stuff. All right? A behavior analysis is understanding why problem behavior occurs, right? And if we understand that an 18-year-old should not go to bed at 9 o'clock and be expected to wake up at 7, but maybe be scheduled to 11 to 7, we might get rid of all that problem behavior. Okay, so the scheduling part based on age is a good first start, especially when it comes to residential care. And a lot of people argue with me, and they have at very good places that I've consulted with in New England. Well, that's just what staffing allows. You're getting $300,000 to serve this kid, and you're telling me he has to go to bed at 9 o'clock? I don't think so. There's no excuse for not having an appropriate sleep schedule for people based on their age. Don't ever tolerate those sort of things, okay? Let's talk about another factoid with sleep, a couple more factoids. This is a stylized graph. It's a blue line showing levels of alertness changing over time. Nighttime, daytime, nighttime. If the blue line's above the red, it means the person's alert and awake. If the blue line's below the red, it means they're asleep. Couple little take-home points. Most people get the deepest sleep early in the night. That's why you can see kids at cocktail parties sleeping on their parents' shoulders. Like, how are they doing that? Because they're getting the deepest sleep. Sleep that's hard to rouse them from early in the night. Another thing I want to point out is our kids and you and I are not like cell phone batteries. We don't go to bed when we're at about 2% charge. And then at the night, we charge up, and we wake up feeling great. And then we kind of lose our charge during the day. That's called linear alertness. And it's not linear. It's filled with peaks and valleys. And the peaks and valleys are dictated by our body temperature and our biorhythms that are predictable based primarily just on time of day. Okay? But why am I really showing you all this? First, the midday dip in alertness. I promised you, you will be tired right now. It's okay. It's just biology. Second, the forbidden zone. The forbidden zone is more important. The forbidden zone is the time of day where you're most alert, where you're least likely to fall asleep. The forbidden zone is usually 3 hours earlier than when you fell asleep the night before. You with me? So if you fell asleep at 11 o'clock last night, and you normally get a decent amount of sleep, 7.5 plus, then the chances of you falling asleep tonight at 8 o'clock are slim to none. Unless you drink too much, right? You can always take a drug to knock you out. But I'm saying, naturally speaking, forbidden phase is 3 hours earlier than when you fell asleep the night before. What you think about it? Have you ever traveled to some place you had to get up at some ungodly hour, 3 in the morning to go to the airport, so you got it all smart? Oh, I know. I'll go to bed at 8 o'clock. I'll bank that sleep. You ever done that? You're just laying there like this. Why can't I sleep? Right? I cannot. Oh, I must be nervous. I must be nervous about my trip tomorrow. Right? No, you're not nervous. You're biologically not prepared to sleep. It's impossible to fall asleep for you right there. Okay. You might say, what's the big deal? Here's the big deal. A lot of times kids' sleep schedules get off because they get ill, because of summer vacation, because of that Disney World. It's true. I took my kids to Disney World. They were younger then. And what do you got to do if you stay in the park? You got to watch that light show. Now, that's not that fun. But nevertheless, kids seem to like it. They got these floaty things from like 1940, and they kind of light up like a dragon. They blow fake fire, you know. And then if you make it through that, around 11, 11:30, they shoot off fireworks. Well, like I paid, I don't know how much to get in this park. We're watching some fireworks, kids. Drink that coffee. Let's go. She's 3 years old. Just kidding, I don't give him coffee. But anyways, we're up. Now, am I going to return on a Friday so I get the kids' sleep schedule back? Of course not. I spent the dime. I'm staying till Sunday. We get off the plane. I'm like, okay, Gracie, you're 4 years old. Go to bed. It's 8:30 like every other kid in the neighborhood. But she's been accustomed to going to bed at 10:30, 11, 11:30. What am I doing on Sunday night? Putting her to bed in the forbidden zone. And is any surprise that my cute little Gracie's upstairs like this? Mommy, Daddy, can I have a glass of water? Can you read me another book? Ba, ba, ba. You with me? Okay. That's the forbidden zone. But for Gracie, it was no big deal because we know about this stuff. So in a couple days, she did fine. But a lot of kids do not do fine, and parents reinforce a lot of interfering behavior, and that becomes the cycle. Sometimes kids get sick. What do we do to show our love to kids who are sick? We let them sleep. Sleep here, go to bed, sleep on the couch, I'll put a movie on. Sleep, rest, rest, you need rest. Sleep schedule gets off, they feel healthy, the virus is gone. Now you got to go to bed like everybody else, 8:30. Right? And then the strange contingencies start to control behavior, okay? We need to be very leery of the forbidden zone. If we put kids to bed in the forbidden zone, what happens? Nighttime routine noncompliance, long onset delay, and sleep interfering behavior. Okay, let's talk about one less factoid. Ready? We have a tendency to stay up a little bit later every night and wake up a little bit later every morning. Our day-night clock is 24 hours. I know you smarties are like, well, depends on the year. It could be 24, 1 minute. I know, but on average it's 24 hours, right? But our biological clock is a lot longer than that. It's about 15, 20 minutes longer. And then you add artificial light, and our biological clock is really on a 25-hour cycle. Our body temperature, our melatonin release, all that. It's very interesting. And here's how it plays out. And this is really fascinating. This is a young man that's in a National Institute of Health study. He was there for 45 days. Apparently didn't have much of a life. Okay. Can you imagine 45 days in a sleep laboratory? But this cat's there. The first 10 days, he had access to the clock, and they said, put yourself to bed at about the same time like you normally would outside the lab, and wake up when you feel refreshed. No alarm clock set, but he had a clock. And you can see he went to bed about the same time, and he woke up about the same time with the exception of 2 days. We call that entrained. He's entrained to the 24-hour day. Now what they did was they took away, in this middle phase, they took away all cues of night and day. He could not see what it was outside, light or dark. He had no access to clocks. And they said, go to bed when you feel tired, wake up when you feel refreshed. So you can see the black line, by the way, is when he's sleeping. Gray is when he's awake. You can see the black line move over. This is time of day. You see the black line move over a little bit each day, don't you? And you see he gets out of bed a little bit later on 23 out of those 24 days, and the average is 1 hour. Are you with me? So on this day, he went to bed at 11 at night, got up at 7. The next day, he went to bed at midnight, got up at 8. The next day, he went to bed at 1, got up at 9, on average. In 24 days, he slept himself around the clock. This is what we mean when we say our biology is on a 25-hour clock, even though our day-night cycle is on a 24-hour clock. That's why we feel it's okay. If I said, stay up an hour tonight, you'd be like, no problem. If I said, get out of bed an hour early, huh? Right? Easy to sleep in, easy to stay up. Hard to move it backwards. We're going against Mother Nature, right, when we move it backwards. So let's put all this stuff together into how we're going to schedule for the kids, because it's a little counterintuitive. Holy smokes, we're going to move. At the beginning of sleep treatment, what we're going to do is we're going to set the routine later than when they fell asleep the night before. Let me put it a different way. Put them to bed an hour later than when they fell asleep the night before. I see a funny face in the back like, really? So let's talk about this. You got a 4-year-old girl come back from Disney. She's falling asleep around 11 o'clock. The parents are not happy with that. And my solution is, no problem. I'm a sleep researcher. I'm an expert. Put her to bed at midnight. Take care. Where's that clonidine? Okay? Why put her to bed an hour later? Because we know as behavior analysts, the sleep as a reinforcer will be most valuable an hour later than when they fell asleep the night before. If we try to put that 4-year-old girl back at a family-friendly bedtime at 8:30, what are we doing? Put her to bed in the forbidden zone. She's not going to fall asleep, and that behavior problem and the contingencies surrounding it are going to get worse. So we put her to bed later, and if they fall asleep quickly, within 15 minutes, we creep back 15 to 30 minutes. It's called fated bedtime. Usually takes about a week. Put her to bed at 12. She falls asleep quickly. The next day you put her to bed at 11:30. Why are we taking small movements back? Because we're going against Mother Nature, because we don't want to get to the forbidden zone. Then we fade back to a family-friendly bedtime where perhaps she's going to bed at 9, getting up at 7. Okay. Now some of you might be saying, yeah, but if we put her to bed at 1 or midnight, that means she's not getting up till 11. How can you do that? And you're right, that is the implication. So we talk to parents about the implications of fated bedtime. Now chances are she's going to wake up at 7, unfortunately. That's just the way it works, okay? But let's say she sleeps in. We need to prepare parents for that. Sometimes I've had to go to IEP meetings and advocate that the child isn't going to go to school in the mornings for a week. And people get very upset by that. It's breaking the law, right? But nevertheless, I don't mean to get rotten with people, but if I have to, I'll say, show me the data that she's learning anything. One thing. Show me one thing she's learned in the last year. Okay, how about we take a week to fix the sleep problem, right? So if we have to go there, we go there. But we try to be nicer about it. How about this? Bring the grandparents over. The data shows they're probably not sleeping either, right? So have the grandparents do the sleep routine with them. If you have a BCBA, a support staff going in the home, let's go in the morning so the parents can get to work, something of that sort. So my main point is, without being snarky, is we try to build in supports to allow the fated bedtime to occur. It usually only takes a week. Now, we deal with typically developing people too. College students, professors. They hear about our pediatric sleep clinic and want a little advice. We do a thing called chronotherapy. We very rarely do this with young children. We do this with adults every now and then. We do this with teenagers. Chronotherapy is like the opposite of fated bedtime. Instead of putting them to bed later and creeping back, we put them to bed later, later, then later until we move all the way around the clock. Are you with me? Let me give you an example with a graduate student. She really wanted to get up early because she had to teach at 8 a.m. But she was going to bed around 1 to 2 in the morning because that was her habit up to that point. And so we did chronotherapy with her. The first night, she was supposed to go to bed at 5 a.m., make a massive leap. But we say, stay up, entertain yourself, do whatever you want to do, but if you really have to go to sleep, just go to sleep. The goal is 3 hours, but if you can't make 3 hours, that's okay. She fell asleep around 4:30. Then we put light-canceling shades in. We try to do everything we can to make a good sleep environment. Then we say, get up 8 hours later. Then the next night, when should she go to bed? Next day, 7 a.m., 8 a.m., sleep during the day. She did this on spring break. Slept herself around the clock till she lands at the bedtime she wanted to have, which was 10 o'clock. Then we're good. The rest I'm going to talk about, the other 4 things, is how we put the brake on the cycling. Okay? So it's fated bedtime back or chronotherapy forward. I recently dealt with a young woman who got kicked out of school for fighting. She was kicked out, and we were there to help her with the sleep because they found out, she admitted to her parents that she wasn't sleeping until 4 in the morning because she was up playing with her phone, talking to her friends all night. Okay? That made her a mess at school. She happened to get in a fight. She got kicked out of school. So I'm meeting with the family, and we're having family talk. The girl's there. The parents are there. The girl's looking at me like you are. What'd I do to you? Oh, okay. Oh, there we go. There's your pleasantness return. Okay. But she was looking at me. She was eyeballing me. She was just like... She wouldn't look me in the eye. Every time I looked away, I saw her burning me with her laser beam eyeballs. She was making me very uncomfortable. I knew she'd gotten in a fight. I was afraid she could beat me up. But anyways, she admitted to all these things. So the first thing I talked about was chronotherapy with her. Okay? So she stops. All of a sudden, she says, so are you telling me I can go to bed at 7 in the morning and then I don't have to get up until, whatever it was, 1 in the afternoon? I said, that's precisely it. The first night of sleep treatment, that's what I would recommend. She said, so I don't have to go to school during the day. I said, well, you don't have a school to go to. She was expelled. So Not a problem, but yes, theoretically you wouldn't have to go to school because we're going to really try to get this sleep ship fixed. And she goes like this to me, may I? Yeah. Double handshake. Thank you, Dr. Hanley. I want to make it very clear, chronotherapy sounds weird until you're the person experiencing it. People have no problem pushing the clock forward. It's the hard part is pushing the clock backwards. People that have this sleep phase disruption understand that. Okay. Let's talk about nighttime routine. This is stuff that's in Parent Magazine, so I'm not going to talk about this too much. The point is, if we set up consistent routines with families, it allows for biological events to happen that prepare kids to fall asleep. Okay? So we want to have a fairly consistent routine, whether it's in a residential facility or in a home. A routine like you turn the TV off, you play some games or you read books, you take your baths earlier in the night, then you brush your teeth, then you put your PJs on, then you read a couple more books, then you settle off to bed. Okay, something fairly consistent during the night. I'm not going to talk too much about that. We don't try to impose our values on families too bad. But here are the things I do like to talk about. If you're going to have a picture schedule with kids with autism, do not allow them choices to like jump on trampolines right before they go to bed, right? So we try to go from high motor movement to low motor movement towards the end of the night. The biggest thing, though, is gradual changes in the fun factor. You behavioral analysts, I don't know if you ever heard of Mike Perrone's work out of West Virginia University. He does work on what we call dense to lean transition. He does it with non-human animals. He does it with people as well. The whole point is, even if an environment you're transitioning to is very reinforcing, if it's less reinforcing than the environment you're coming from, you'll often meander, pause, engage in escape behavior or problem behavior. It doesn't matter how reinforcing this is in an absolute sense, it's all relative to where you're coming from. Are you with me? Okay. There's no bigger rich to lean transition in the life of a child than when we tell them to go to bed. Right? Think about it. In my house, we're in our sunken living room, TV on, we got books, electronics, we got snacks, we huddle, hang out with each other, we're cuddling each other, we got floor heat, we got a little bit of lighting, we got everything you can imagine, right? We're all in the living room, everything's awesome. And then I tell my baby, go to bed. And what does that mean? She now has to transition to a cold, dark room devoid of anything. It's true. Think about it. It's the ultimate dense to lean transition. And so it's no surprise that kids give us a lot of crap when we ask them to go to bed, right? Same thing in residential facilities. Everything's great. Now you go to bed. There's not much there, okay? So we talk about gradual change in the fun factor. There's two things we do to obviate this dense to lean transition. One, put in a medium event. When they go up to their bedroom, maybe there's a beanbag chair, and you hang out with them, and you give them some attention and some love while you read a book. That's my favorite thing to recommend to parents before they go to bed. There's nothing better than that. Some kids don't want anything to do with books. We do book reading programs where we start out with a video player. All kids like some sort of videos, unfortunately. We start out with the video player. We put the book behind it. Every now and then the parent drops the book, reads a word, puts the movie back up. We kind of morph it into the book. It takes a long time, but kids eventually get into the interaction with their family before bed. We also recommend, typically developing families, we like surprises under the pillow. That's a great way to remove the issue with the dense to lean transition. It's very cute. I'm not talking chocolates, even though fancy hotels do that with us. I'm certainly not talking Cheetos, okay? No Cheetos in bed, okay? What we're talking about a lot of times is just a note. And the note isn't just, I love you, you're the best, that sort of thing. It's a little note about a special thing they might do the next day. It's the promise of goodness the next day. Those are little surprises that a kid can go from the best trot up on stairs because there's just a little reinforcer there, okay, that connects them to good things. Sometimes we do that. We often tell parents, if you're going to buy, you know, we work with families that have outrageous resources sometimes. They buy them stuffed animals and PJs and all this stuff. We're like, don't just give it to them. Put it under their pillow. You got them new pajamas with their new favorite superhero on them. Put them under their pillow. You got a new stuffy. Put it under their pillow. Are you with me? So we do a lot of put it under the pillow stuff, okay?